I was worth exactly £1 to the man I had called my husband for 7 years, and I learned it while standing in a room full of people who had always waited for me to fall. The rain had started before dawn that morning. It slid down the tall windows of Ashworth Manor and blurred the gardens into gray shadows. I stood alone in the drawing room, dressed in black, listening to the steady tapping of water against the glass. The roses outside bent low under the weight of the storm. I had planted those roses the first spring after my wedding. I had believed they would grow as my marriage grew. I had believed many foolish things. My husband, Philip Ashworth, had been dead for 11 days. They said it was a fever. Sudden. Fast. Merciless. I had sat beside his bed through every hour of it. I had pressed cool cloths to his burning skin, when I had whispered comfort into ears that never turned toward me. Even in his final breath, his eyes searched the room as if he expected someone else to appear. I told myself it was the sickness speaking. I did not want to know the truth. At 10 o'clock sharp, the lawyer arrived. Mr. Thomas Blackwell was a thin man, with pale eyes magnified by round spectacles. He carried a leather case, as if it contained something precious. I greeted him with steady hands and a straight back. I was still Mrs. Eleanor Ashworth, still the lady of this house. At least, I believed I was. I had expected a private reading of the will, a quiet meeting between widow and solicitor. Instead, the drawing room was already occupied. My sister-in-law, Prudence Whitmore, sat near the fireplace in perfect morning attire, yet her dark hair was arranged without a strand out of place. Beside her stood her husband, Richard Whitmore, tall and stiff, his mouth pressed into a thin line. And in the far corner of the room sat a woman I did not recognize. She was younger than me, auburn hair tucked neatly beneath a bonnet, hands folded in her lap. She did not look at anyone. She looked down as if she were waiting for judgment. Something inside me shifted, but I took my seat and lifted my chin. I would not show fear. I would not show doubt. The rain grew louder. The fire cracked in the hearth. Mr. Blackwell opened his case and removed the folded papers. He began with long sentences full of legal language, words about property, investments, holdings. I listened without truly hearing. My thoughts drifted to the last conversation I had with Philip before he fell ill. What he had spoken of changing documents, of putting things in order. I had not asked questions. He never liked questions. Then the lawyer said my name. To my wife, Eleanor Ashworth, I leave the sum of £1. For a moment, I believed I had misunderstood. £1. I did not breathe. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. 1 single pound. Prudence's lips curved before she could stop herself. A quick flicker of satisfaction crossed her face. The lawyer continued. The remainder of my estate, including Ashworth Manor, the townhouse in Boston, all investments, lands, and liquid assets totaling approximately $50 million, I leave to Miss Margaret Sinclair. The woman in the corner slowly raised her head. Our eyes met. Her eyes were pale blue, not triumphant, not proud. There was something else in them, and something that looked like sorrow. But I could not think about her sorrow. $50 million. The house, the land, everything. Gone. I gripped the arm of my chair. My knuckles turned white. Who is she? I asked, my voice barely steady. Mr. Blackwell adjusted his spectacles. Miss Sinclair was a companion to your husband. Companion. The word echoed in my skull like a gunshot. Prudence let out a soft laugh before covering it with a cough. I stood slowly. I felt as if I were standing in water that reached my chest. Heavy. Cold. Companion? I repeated. The woman rose from her chair. She looked at me fully now. There were tears in her eyes. "I never meant for this to hurt you," she said softly. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. That kindness broke something inside me. I did not shout. I did not cry. I had been raised too well for such scenes. Instead, I walked out of the room. The hallway felt longer than it ever had before. The portraits on the walls watched me pass. Generations of Ashworth men and women stared down as if judging my worth. I climbed the staircase and entered the bedroom that had never truly felt like mine. Philip had kept separate rooms for most of our marriage. I closed the door and leaned against it. £1. 7 years of loyalty. 7 years of dinners hosted, guests entertained, staff managed, letters written, smiles forced. £1. A knock sounded at the door. "Mrs. Ashworth?" It was Mrs. Porter, the housekeeper. She had worked here longer than I had been alive. "Yes. There is a carriage waiting. Your aunt has sent for you." My Aunt Caroline. The only family I had left. I opened the door. Mrs. Porter's eyes were red. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Those words nearly undid me. Within an hour, my trunk was packed, my personal belongings reduced to what could fit inside a single case. I descended the stairs for the last time. The marble floors gleamed beneath the gray light. The chandelier shimmered. Everything looked the same. Yet nothing belonged to me anymore. As I stepped outside, the rain soaked the hem of my black dress. And there, at the bottom of the steps, stood a man I recognized. Sebastian Hale. He had been Philip's friend years ago. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair touched with silver at the temples. His eyes were sharp and searching. "I came as soon as I heard," he said quietly. I almost laughed. "You heard about my husband's death?" I asked. His jaw tightened. I heard about the will." So the humiliation had already spread. "I see," I said. There was something in his expression, not pity, something closer to anger. "I am sorry," he said. "For what?" I asked calmly. "For his death? Or for the fact that I am worth $1? His eyes darkened. "You are worth far more than he ever understood," he said. The words struck deeper than he could have known, but I did not stay to hear more. I stepped into the carriage. The door shut behind me. The horses began to move. Through the rain-streaked window, I watched Ashworth Manor fade into gray mist, and I made myself a promise. I would learn who Margaret Sinclair truly was. I would learn why my husband had chosen her over me, and I would not let my story end with $1 single. The rain followed me all the way to my aunt's house, and as if the sky itself wished to witness my disgrace. Aunt Caroline's home stood on the edge of Hartford, a tall white house with green shutters and wide steps that had once felt like safety to me. I had spent summers there as a girl, running through her garden and believing the world was simple. As the carriage stopped, I saw her waiting at the door despite the weather. She did not speak when I stepped down. She simply opened her arms. I had held myself together through the reading of the will. I had held myself together when I walked out of my own home. But in my aunt's embrace, the strength left me. "He left me $1, I whispered against her shoulder. She did not gasp. She did not curse. She only held me tighter. "Then we shall see what that dollar truly means," she said quietly. Inside, the house was warm, and a fire burned bright in the hearth. Tea waited on the small table by the window. It felt like another world from the one I had just left. I told her everything. About the lawyer, about Prudence's smile, about the $50 million. about the woman with the pale blue eyes who had inherited my life. Margaret Sinclair, my aunt repeated slowly. I have heard that name before. My heart jumped. Where? In whispers, she said. Years ago, before your engagement was announced. She rose and walked toward the window, her hands clasped behind her back. There were rumors, she continued. Philip was once attached to a young governess. It was said he wished to marry her. His father would not allow it. The words felt like ice sliding down my spine. He chose duty instead, I said softly. He chose me. Yes, my aunt replied. But perhaps he never truly stopped choosing her. The truth hurt more than the insult of the will. It meant my marriage had never been a love story. It had been a bargain. That evening, I sat alone in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. 7 years of cold distance suddenly made sense. The late nights, the separate bedrooms, the way he had looked through me instead of at me. He had loved someone else all along. The next morning, the butler announced a visitor. Sebastian Hale. My aunt raised a brow, but allowed him in. He entered the drawing room with the same quiet intensity I remembered from the day before. Rain clung to his coat again. His eyes found mine immediately. I hope I am not intruding, he said. You are not, my aunt answered before I could speak. But you may begin explaining why you look as though you carry a secret. He did not sit at first. He stood before us as if preparing for battle. I knew about Margaret, he said. The room fell silent. You knew? I repeated. Yes. He finally took a seat but remained stiff. Philip and I were close once, he continued. He told me about her years ago. They were in love. My hands curled tightly in my lap. In love? They planned to marry, Sebastian said. They did marry, in secret. The words struck harder than the will. Yeah, they were husband and wife, I whispered. For a short time, he replied. Philip's father had it annulled. He used his influence to erase the marriage from record. The girl was sent away. I struggled to breathe. So Margaret was not merely a mistress, I said. She was his first wife. Yes. The room seemed to tilt around me. Everything I believed about my life shifted. Philip had not betrayed me for pleasure. He had betrayed me because he had never stopped loving her. Why did you not tell me? I asked Sebastian. His jaw tightened. I wanted to, many times, but it was not my place. And I believed he would grow to love you in time. He did not, I said quietly. Sebastian looked at me, then with something raw in his eyes. He should have. The weight of his words lingered. My aunt broke the silence. What do you intend to do with this information? Sebastian hesitated. There is more. My heart thudded painfully. Philip found Margaret again 10 years ago, he said. They resumed contact, letters, meetings. I believe the will was his attempt to correct what had been stolen from her. And what was stolen from me? I asked. His eyes softened. You were never meant to be punished. Punished. That was exactly how it felt. Sebastian reached into his coat and withdrew a folded letter. I found this among Philip's private papers, he said. It was hidden. The solicitor did not know it existed. My hands trembled as I took it. It was addressed to me. I unfolded the paper carefully. My dear Eleanor, it began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and I must finally speak the truth I lacked courage to say while alive. I married you knowing my heart belonged to another. I told myself it was duty. It was fear. I believed time would change me. It did not. My vision blurred. Sebastian stepped closer but did not touch me. I continued reading. You deserved honesty. You deserved love. I gave you neither fully. The will I have drafted provides you security. Margaret receives the estate as restitution for what was taken from her. You will have enough to begin anew. Do not hate me for being weak. I was never strong enough to be the man either of you needed." The letter ended there. Security. He had meant to leave me security. "Prudence," I breathed. Sebastian nodded. "The original will left you far more than $1. The change was made during his final days." The room felt cold. "Prudence visited often when he was ill," Sebastian continued. "Too often. And each visit, his condition worsened." A terrible thought formed in my mind. "You cannot mean—" "I mean that his death may not have been natural." The words struck like thunder. My aunt stood slowly. "You are suggesting murder." "I am suggesting investigation," Sebastian replied carefully. "The apothecary who prepared Philip's medicine has disappeared." My pulse pounded in my ears. Prudence had smiled too easily in that drawing room. She had seemed too pleased. "Why would she do such a thing?" I whispered. "Because," Sebastian said grimly, "if Philip lived long enough, he might have changed the will again." The fire crackled loudly in the silence. I thought of Prudence leaning over her brother's bed, of the tonics she insisted on bringing him herself, of the way his fever had worsened so suddenly. I felt sick. "Well, what do we do?" I asked. "We find proof," Sebastian answered. Quietly, carefully. His gaze held mine, steady and unwavering. "You deserve the truth," he said. For the first time since the will was read, I felt something stronger than humiliation. I felt purpose. "If Prudence had a hand in his death," I said slowly, "then she will answer for it." Sebastian stepped closer. "You will not face this alone," he said. There was something in his voice now that had not been there before. Not duty, not pity, something warmer. I looked at him fully for the first time, at the concern etched into his features, at the quiet strength in his posture. "Why are you helping me?" I asked softly. He held my gaze without hesitation. "Because I have admired you for years," he said. "Because you deserved better than the life you were given. And because I cannot stand by while injustice destroys you again." The words settled deep inside me. Outside, the rain finally stopped. And as sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time since Philip's death, I understood something clearly. This was not the end of my humiliation. It was the beginning of a fight, and I would not walk away from it. The truth did not arrive with shouting or drama. It came quietly, in whispers, in missing records, and in the fear behind a man's trembling hands. 3 weeks passed after Sebastian first spoke his suspicion aloud. 3 weeks of careful questions and guarded visits. We did not move openly. Prudence believed herself safe. That arrogance became her weakness. Sebastian traveled often to Boston, under the excuse of estate business. I remained with my aunt, writing letters and gathering information from the few servants who had once trusted me. They spoke carefully, but little by little a pattern formed. Prudence had visited Philip every day during the final week of his illness. She insisted on bringing his medicine herself. She dismissed servants when she entered his room, and after each visit, his condition worsened. The apothecary who prepared the tonics, Mr. Harold Finch, had closed his shop the morning after Philip's death. No explanation, no farewell. He had vanished. Sebastian found him in Baltimore. The man was hiding in a boarding house near the docks, pale and thin, as if guilt itself had drained the life from him. Sebastian did not threaten him. He did not need to. The man was already broken. When confronted, Mr. Finch wept. "She came to me," he confessed. "Lady Whitmore. She said her brother suffered from nerves. She asked for something mild at first, then stronger still. What did you give her? Sebastian asked. The man's hands shook violently. Arsenic, he whispered. Small doses, enough to weaken him slowly. The room fell silent when Sebastian told us. I felt no scream rising in my throat, no dramatic collapse, only a cold, steady clarity. Prudence had murdered her own brother, not in rage, not in impulse, in calculation. She needed him weak, confused, dependent. She needed him to sign the altered will, and once he did, she needed him gone. The evidence grew quickly after that. Financial records showed large payments from Richard Whitmore to the apothecary. Letters in Prudence's handwriting discussed final arrangements and ensuring certainty. Servants testified that she alone administered the last doses of tonic. When the authorities arrived at her Boston residence, she screamed that it was a lie, that I had fabricated it, that Sebastian sought revenge. But the proof was overwhelming. Richard attempted to flee the country. He was caught at the docks with forged documents and stolen funds from his business partners. So his crimes unfolded like a second scandal beside the first. The newspapers devoured the story. Society woman arrested for brother's murder. Poison and fortune in Ashworth scandal. I did not attend the trial. I had watched Philip die once. I would not watch his sister condemned. Sebastian attended every day. Each evening he returned to my aunt's house and told me what had happened. Prudence denied everything. But Mr. Finch testified. The servants testified. The letters were read aloud in court. The jury took less than an hour. Guilty. Prudence was sentenced to life imprisonment. Richard received 15 years for fraud and conspiracy. And just like that, the storm ended. Philip's original will was restored, using the hidden letter Sebastian had discovered. The court recognized his final written intentions, and I received the Boston house and a generous annual income. Margaret retained the manor and the larger estate, as Philip had intended. There was no bitterness between us. Margaret and I met again after the verdict. She looked tired, but lighter somehow. I never wanted this to be your fate, she said. Nor yours, I replied. We were not rivals. We never had been. We were two women who had loved the same flawed man and paid different prices for it. She used her fortune to establish a home for governesses with nowhere else to go. It was her quiet way of protecting the young woman she once had been. I respected her for that. Weeks later, I stood in my aunt's garden beneath the oak tree where I had once played as a child. The air was cool. Autumn leaves drifted down gently around me. Sebastian approached without a sound. It is finished, he said softly. Yes, I replied. Philip's name had been cleared of the stain of scandal. His death had truth attached to it now. His final attempt to make peace between his past and present had not been entirely destroyed. And I was no longer the woman who had stood humiliated in that drawing room. I had fought. I had uncovered the truth. I had reclaimed my name. How do you feel? Sebastian asked. I thought carefully before answering. Free, I said. He studied my face as if memorizing it. Then he reached into his coat and removed a small velvet box. My heart stilled. I told you once, he said, voice steady, though his eyes betrayed emotion, that I would wait. I have waited 7 years, Eleanor. I do not wish to wait any longer. He opened the box. Its inside rested a gold ring set with a deep blue sapphire. This belonged to my mother, he continued. She believed love should be chosen, not arranged. I ask you now, not from duty, not from pity, but from devotion. Will you marry me? There was no fear in me. No hesitation. The life I had lived before felt distant. A lesson learned. A chapter closed. I stepped closer and placed my hand over his. "Yes," I said. His breath left him in a soft laugh of relief. "Yes," he repeated. "Yes, Sebastian." He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. He pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in my life, I felt chosen. Not selected for connection, not selected for advantage. Chosen for myself. We married in the spring in a small church outside Hartford. My aunt stood proudly beside me. Margaret attended quietly, offering a gentle smile that carried no sorrow now. When Sebastian looked at me at the altar, his eyes held certainty. Not obligation, not regret. Love. The kind of love that does not hide in shadows, the kind that does not require secrets, the kind that does not measure a woman's worth in coins. I had once been left $1 in a room full of humiliation, but I had gained something far greater. I had gained truth, I had gained strength, and I had gained a love that was beyond price.